All right.
All right, thank you all for joining us tonight. On behalf of the Jefferson and for Atkinson Chamber of Commerce, we're glad we're able to provide this opportunity for voters to learn more about their candidates before our election. To come up with the questions that we'll be asking tonight, we surveyed the members of both the Jefferson and Fort Atkinson chambers to learn more about what issues were important to them, and those responses helped to inform us in creating the questions for tonight. We will be asking up to 10 questions on 10 different topics tonight. We'll begin with a short introduction, and then each question will have a 2-minute time limit. For the crowd, we request that you remain respectful while our candidate is speaking and refrain from applauding, booing, or any other audible expression. This hour, we are covering District 38. District 38 includes Horicon, Juneau, Hustisburg, Watertown, Johnson Creek, and Jefferson, and all of the little towns in those communities. We have William Benjamin here with us tonight, and there is another candidate running for District 38. Izzy Cassie-Navarez is not joining us tonight. So we will just hear from William Benjamin here. If you are interested in learning about Izzy Cassie-Navarez, please reach out to his campaign with your questions to learn more about him and where he stands. When you walked in, the table over by the doorway, we have information on the maps, voter registration, and some other helpful information. So please stop by there on your way out tonight. With that, I will pass things over to Logan.
All right, thank you. All right, so our first question, tell us a bit about yourself and why you are running for the state assembly.
Sure. So hello, everybody. First, I would like to thank the Jefferson and Fort Atkinson Chambers of Commerce for the opportunity to have a conversation tonight. Civil dialogue and civil discourse are really, really important to who we are as Americans and our healthy republic and who we are as a country. I'm William Benjamin. I'm running to continue serving you in the Wisconsin State Assembly. This is my third time running in the legislature, and I want to continue serving the great people of Dodge and Jefferson counties. For me, it's really all about service. Service is why I raised my right hand and I took an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States and the United States Army Reserve. Service is why my wife and I adopted a segment of highway along Highway 16 just outside of Fall River in Columbia County. And service is why I regularly donate blood through the American Red Cross, like I did earlier this week. When I'm not down in Madison or working on legislation or talking with folks, I am a part-time substitute teacher at our Watertown and Dodgeland school districts. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm a part-time citizen soldier in the Army Reserve, where I serve as a non-commissioned officer. I lead a squad of soldiers. I love what I do, and I believe it helps me helps me as a well-rounded individual and a better state representative to serve and represent you.
Thank you, William. Our next question, what would you do or what have you done to improve the quality of life for the constituents in your district?
Excellent question, so thank you. So this session, the sessions are 2 years. It goes by in the blink of an eye, so it goes by really quickly. But I introduced over 30 pieces of legislation, and 8 were passed and signed into law by the governor. So each of those inherently, because we have a Republican legislature and a Democrat governor, were bipartisan. And I'm very proud of a lot of the work we got done. There was some really good stuff from school bus safety legislation. So we haven't increased the penalty for illegally passing a school bus in Wisconsin since before I was born. So the penalty was just stupid low. So we increased it to $500 for the first offense. for illegally passing a school bus with its stop arm extended and the red lights flashing. Very obvious that you're supposed to stop, but some people just don't have a regard for safety. And the second offense would be $1,000. So school bus safety is a really, really big importance, and it's been on my radar. The other thing I'd like to talk about are things that aren't necessarily things that don't necessarily make media coverage. They're not necessarily attractive or fancy, but eliminating defunct and ineffective government programs. So believe it or not, there are programs on the books that either could use some retooling or some reworking, or should just be eliminated altogether. So this past session, the Land Recycling Loan Program was one of those programs that it hadn't been used since 2008. It was still on the books. It was just, it no longer needed to be there. So we got rid of it. And it's not something that, everyone's going to wake up and go, oh, wow, the Land Recycling Loan Program is gone. There's other good programs that have taken its place, but that one was quite defunct. There's some other ones that didn't quite get across the finish line. Lottery winners can remain anonymous if they win over $1 million. It got a hearing, got some good attention. That's something I think has potential. There's some other good legislation, such as combating organized retail theft. So there's more opportunities for next session as well.
Thank you. The state of Wisconsin, like many other areas of the country, is facing higher interest rates and a housing supply shortage of both single and multi-unit homes. What actions do you believe the state government should take to ensure Wisconsinites have access to affordable housing?
Yeah, so this one's a really big deal, and it's something I've taken on in my first 2 terms in the assembly. So housing inventory is a huge pressing issue. It's something that's impacting my generation. It's impacting the generation above me. And it's really something that a lot of individuals who want to buy their first home simply can't afford to do so when your median home is $250,000. That's quite high. So the Wisconsin Realtors Association had a report in May of this year that confirms basically what I said, that housing has never been more unaffordable. And that's really due to a couple things. We have low inventory, and we've had the out-of-control inflation that have made it really, really difficult, and it's driven the prices really, really high. During my time in office, I authored legislation to create low-interest housing loans through WHEDA, the Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Authority, that basically help individuals making up to 120% of the median county household income apply for low-interest loans to help their home remain in a safe and sanitary condition. So we're talking about things like replacing roofing, replacing siding, foundation, heating and cooling systems, also removing asbestos and lead abatement as well. Just safe and sanitary conditions. And that bill was part of a package of a $525 million investment we made this session towards workforce housing and senior housing as well. Unfortunately, the governor, through his line item veto pen, made some changes to my legislation when it came to the funding that made the loan into a grant. So unfortunately, the funding isn't going to be around once it's already been spent, and I think that's really too bad. But there was a lot of other good investments we made, such as Main Street housing program, and we really moved the needle this session, and I'm excited to see where next session takes us as well.
Thank you. Many businesses across the state of Wisconsin are struggling to find workers. How do you plan to address the labor shortage that many industries are facing?
Yeah, great question as well. So Wisconsin needs more workers, plain and simple. But how do you get more workers? That's the million-dollar question. It's quite a paradox, because when I was growing up, especially around the 2008 recession, we were talking about jobs. How to create more jobs? And we finally moved to the other side, that now we have a lot of plentiful jobs, but we need workers to fill them. And I want to support pro-growth policies here in this state that encourage individuals to re-enter the workforce if they've become, because of whether it was COVID or whatnot, if they've gotten sidetracked. Today's economy is really rewarding for individuals who want to roll up their sleeves and get to work. Like I said, I substitute teach, so I talk to young folks, and it's really a great opportunity that even when I graduated high school 10 years ago already, the status quo was that you graduated high school, you went on to a four-year college, and you got a degree of some sort, and then you went out into the workforce. But today, that's changing, because college is really, really expensive. And we all know about the student loan situation, that if you're not necessarily looking to become a doctor, a lawyer, engineer, or something that specifically requires a college degree, there's a lot of really good opportunities through apprenticeships, and opportunities to work with employers, even while you're in high school, to get your foot in the door, to see if this is something I want to do as a career. And we're talking really good paying jobs in manufacturing and in industry, welders and door and window installers, good paying jobs. And that's what I want to continue to do, is support the trades, support our apprenticeships, and other alternatives to get people into the workforce as soon as possible with that necessary skill set.
To what extent do you support the legalization of marijuana for medical or recreational use in Wisconsin?
Yeah, so this one is a very controversial one, and so I've got a background in the MP, the military police world, in the Army, and it's something that I can tell you is not supported by law enforcement. We have a lot of problems on our Wisconsin roads with impaired driving, as is, and I certainly don't want to make that worse. The cool thing about state government is that you can look at other states and you can look at what they're doing well, what they're not doing well, and you can try to adjust and make good policy in Wisconsin. And you look at a state like Colorado, where they did legalize marijuana. I believe they were the first to do so. And they're having a lot of challenges out there. We talk about that, oh, well, it's this big revenue generator. However, as a free market, limited government kind of guy, just because something's a big revenue driver doesn't make it good public policy. If it makes a lot of money for the government, that's not a good reason to do something. And we just got over the COVID pandemic, where we shut down the economy for months, for public health, because COVID had a negative impact on breathing and on and people's airways. And a lot of the same negative impacts you see with marijuana. And so it's not moving the needle in the right direction. I'm completely against for recreational use. For medicinal use, there are some positive effects from users with chronic pain. Like I said, with my background in the military, I've talked to a lot of vets who have experienced a lot of challenges with the opioids and all that, and pills. So I think there is potential for Wisconsin to legalize it for medicinal purposes. Personally, there's no other medication that is smoked, so I don't think that smoking your drugs and medicine it should be on the table. I do support oils, pills, edibles, creams, gels, vapors, patches, and liquids, and other ways in which folks can potentially get some really good care. So I do think there's potential for medicinal use in Wisconsin.
Thank you. The manufacturing industry in Jefferson County is rapidly growing, with recent announcements of large investments from companies like Aslan Bio, Nestle Purina, and Kikkoman. How do you plan to support sustainable economic development in Jefferson County's rural communities?
Yeah, it's absolutely huge. Having a business-friendly environment here in Wisconsin is critical for our long-term business success and vitality. In Wisconsin here, we're competing with every other state for workers, for businesses, in every sector, and Dodge and Jefferson counties that I represent are no different. So for me, I'm a numbers guy. It starts with the tax code. You have to have a simplified tax code that broadens the base and lowers the overall tax rate for individuals. So the more economic activity that you have, the more corporations and companies that will be paying in. So that's broadening the base. And then the lower the tax rate, the more business friendly it is for companies to come and do business in Wisconsin, lowering the rate to the lowest possible rate. In Wisconsin, we place taxes on certain things that are bad. We place taxes on cigarettes, speeding, reckless driving, illegally passing school buses, like we talked about earlier. And we're trying to disincentivize people from doing those things. So when you tax income excessively, it creates this disincentive for people to get ahead and to want to work harder, accept that promotion, and provide more for their families. So we need to simplify Wisconsin's tax code that rewards success and not penalize it.
Wisconsin has an abundance of natural resources, including lakes, rivers, forests, and other recreational amenities. What policies would you support to protect Wisconsin's natural resources?
Yeah, I love our state parks and our state wildlife areas. A couple weeks ago, I took my family over to Wyalusing State Park. It's in the southwest corner of the state, where the Wisconsin River meets the Mississippi. It's stunning. The sunrises and the sunsets, absolutely beautiful. And we are so blessed here in Wisconsin to have an abundance of natural resources. It's paramount that we do protect them. This reminds me of a bill that I introduced this session that unfortunately it was one of those 22 that didn't quite make it. But it basically would have increased the penalty for intentionally vandalizing state and local property. There are individuals who unfortunately don't have a whole lot of regard for our natural resources and our beauty, and I think that's really too bad. It's important that we're all good stewards of the resources that we have. We're not intentionally destroying it. That's completely inappropriate. Just as another thing as well. So our out-of-state camping fees for out-of-state campers. Through the budget process, we raised that. I think it had been $35. We raised that to $45 for out-of-state campers. So if someone's from Illinois and they want to camp overnight here in Wisconsin, they're going to be paying a little bit more. And it's not just to stick it to the other states. We looked around at what some of the other states were charging Wisconsin residents to camp in their states overnight, and this really it's on par with that. So generating a little bit more revenue from out-of-state folks, so that we can continue to take care of and maintain our state parks, our state recreational areas, and woodlands. Recreation is huge in Wisconsin. It's a huge part of our way of life.
One of the first actions that the legislature takes with the new session is writing the biennial state budget. With the rising cost of living impacting many Wisconsin families, how do you plan to balance the need for revenue with the financial pressures on residents and businesses?
Yeah, this one, it's a very tough one because unfortunately today a dollar isn't worth what it was worth 4 years ago. And that's impacting everyone. That's impacting our state governments, our local governments, individuals and families. Everything costs more than it used to. So spending money wisely has never been more important than it is today. And that applies both to our state government and our federal government, certainly our federal government, but also to individuals. So in Wisconsin, we need a balanced approach. We have to balance our budget. I don't believe we should increase taxes. We have to be good stewards of the resources that we have. But also spending money responsibly at the individual level. This brings up another bill I authored with Representative Alex Dahlman this session to get personal financial literacy into our high schools. So I'm proud to say that one of the 8 bills that I authored and passed is guaranteeing personal financial literacy in our high schools, starting with the class of 2028. And we're not teaching kids necessarily how to become Fortune 500 investors, become millionaires. I mean, that's great. We wish them all the best and all the success in the world. But we got to get back to the basics. How to responsibly use credit, how to balance a budget. The federal government could take that course. Risk management, saving and investing, and insurance. What is insurance? There was a student who testified on the bill while it was in committee. I'm also on the education committee and heard lots of good testimony as well. And the student said something that really stuck with me. And the student said, in school, we're given the opportunity to be physically fit. Now with this legislation, we're also given the opportunity to be financially fit. And I think that's just so important here in Wisconsin that we start to raise up a new generation of individuals who know how to responsibly use money, Hopefully, a whole bunch of them get elected to state and federal government, and we can hopefully balance the federal government budget again someday.
So the state of Wisconsin currently has about a $4 billion surplus, according to the nonpartisan Legislative Fiscal Bureau. Would you support spending the current surplus? And if so, what would you support spending it on?
So I think it's important to remember how we got here. And it's really twofold. One, that we've had responsible spending for the last foreseeable future that's put us in a really good economic position. And the other one is that in Wisconsin, we've overtaxed. People have paid in more in taxes than the government needed to spend. So rather than spending all that money away on new permanent programs, I think most of that money should be returned to the people who overpaid. I really do. So property tax rebates, income rebates for income tax. There's a number of ways we can go about this. We've tried a whole bunch of comprehensive tax reform this past session. Fortunately, the governor vetoed the vast majority of it. But I do think there's opportunities as well for road improvement. There's a particular program that has wild success so far. It's called ARIP, the Agriculture Road Improvement Program. And it basically, we're looking at investing in improving roads specifically that benefit agriculture here in the state. Agriculture is a huge sector of our Wisconsin economy, and these folks, they use our roads to get out to their fields, to haul goods. It's super important that the roads that for a while didn't get the attention that they need, that we're able to improve those. So we're seeing a lot of really good investment there. That's something I'd like to continue with our ARIP program. When it comes to improving local roads and bridges as well, I think there's potential there. This past session, I submitted a budget motion for $2 million to decouple the Main Street Bridge in Watertown. It was an old bridge. It was literally built into the surrounding building, the old Masonic temple down there. So it was part of, they were literally intertwined, and they were joined together. And it was just to replace the bridge, the building was going to have to come down too. So we had a $2 million budget motion to decouple the building and replace the Main Street Watertown Bridge. Super huge investment for Watertown and for the surrounding area as well, because Highway 19, State Highway 19 runs down through downtown Watertown as well.
Thank you. So earlier this year, we saw the HSHS hospitals close their doors in the Eau Claire area, causing hundreds of people to lose their jobs and thousands to lose their current healthcare provider. What are your plans to support our existing healthcare providers while also ensuring that all individuals have access to quality, affordable healthcare?
Yeah, so healthcare, another complicated and really tough area. So great questions tonight. But with the Western hospitals there was legislation that I voted in favor to pass that unfortunately the governor vetoed. So that's an unfortunate circumstance that we're dealing with as a state for now. But by far the best healthcare individuals can get is through their employer. It gives you the most flexibility, the most options. And that's by far the best way to do it. But I get it that some folks work seasonal jobs. Some people work more than one part-time job where they can't get insurance through their employer. So in Wisconsin, we've got a great program. We've got Medicaid, and we have Badger Care Plus. So in Wisconsin, we've got 1.47 million Wisconsinites. That's about 25% of our state's population, who's currently enrolled in Medicaid, and of that, just north of 500,000 individuals are folks enrolled in Badger Care Plus. So in Wisconsin, we do look out for the most needy and the most vulnerable in this state, and we are a very generous state, making sure that folks, the best way to get it is through your employer. There's options available on the marketplace exchange, and then there's also options available through Medicaid and Badger Care Plus. So there's good options available, but like I said, I'm a numbers guy. So to be completely honest, when you got about 25% of your state's population on Medicaid, that's a pretty substantial rate. That, you know, if you look at the reimbursement rates, it's also not that private insurance is able to reimburse hospitals. So you're running into a lot of issues where individuals on Medicaid um, the hospitals aren't able to keep up, and it's causing some unfortunate outcomes.
This past spring, over 90 Wisconsin school districts went to referendum to address potential funding needs. How do you plan to ensure equitable and sustainable funding for K-12 education across all districts? What specific policies or reforms would you propose to address the funding disparities and support districts that are struggling financially?
Sure. So in Wisconsin, education is super important, and I see it as a part-time substitute teacher in the Watertown and Dodgeland school districts. It's important that we invest in education. Investing in education, there's a bell curve to it, that if you don't invest enough, you're not going to see good outcomes. But also, when you get over the curve and you're investing like crazy, you're not seeing the outcomes that you should be seeing when you're investing that sort of money. So you need to get the best bang for your buck. Here in Wisconsin, the past few budget cycles, we've reached 2/3 funding for K through 12 education. And I think that's overall, that's a pretty good balancing point. That, you know, we can talk about, you know, some of the funding formulas and you know, the levy limits. But essentially at the end of the day, if school districts, for whatever reason, because each of our 421 school districts are unique, no school district is the same, but if a school district needs to go above and beyond that, they have the opportunity to do so in referendum. And you know, if the referendum is well thought out and they can make a good case to the voters, you know, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. What do the people of Wisconsin want? And so if there need to be additional investments above and beyond the 2/3 spending contributions, there's avenues of approach for school districts there.
Thank you for participating tonight. So before we close things out, is there anything else that you feel that it is important for voters to know about you prior to the election?
Thank you. That went by fast. So I appreciate the opportunity to have the conversation tonight. You know, there's 995 chapters of the Wisconsin state statutes, and no one knows everything. No one's an expert at all of them. And I'm one of 99 in the assembly. It's not my way or the highway, and I can't get anything done by myself. So it's imperative that I work with my Republican colleagues and I work with my Democrat colleagues so to get anything done and across the finish line. You know, like I said, this is my third time running for the assembly. And when I decided to run for re-election, I wanted to make it clear that I still bring the same energy, enthusiasm, and intensity that I did when I ran during the special election in 2021. So I made it a personal goal of mine that I was going to be the first candidate in the whole state to turn in my nomination signatures. And April 15th hit, I went out knocking on lots of doors. I was out in Horicon that day, got really, really sunburnt, but had a whole bunch of success, overwhelming support. And by golly, I was the first candidate to turn in my nomination signatures and officially get on the ballot for the November election this year. And that's, you know, it helps show that, you know, I care very much about this job. I care very much about all the municipalities in the district, in Southern Dodge County, in Northern Jefferson County. You know, people work really, really hard to provide for their families and pursue the American dream. State government really ought to be working hard in return and being good stewards of that money as well. I've authored over 30 bills, and we talked about some of them tonight. I'd love to talk with you about some of the other ones as well, but 8 were passed and signed into law. So there's more to do. But this session we got a lot done, from the historic shared revenue deal to keeping the Milwaukee Brewers in Wisconsin through 2050, to protecting students on our school buses, eliminating defunct government programs. You know, it's about the people, and I'm working hard for you. So I appreciate the opportunity, and it's an honor to serve as your state representative, and I'm asking for your vote on November 5th.
All right, thank you. I will pass the microphone back to Megan for some closing words.
Thank you again to Representative Humphrey That case creates